Hello everyone, welcome to this demo on how to create an image trace. What we're going to do now is start with a photograph, and we're going to start creating shapes with the pen tool on top of the photograph until we cover it completely, and it's all going to be built from shapes and colors and gradients and textures. So this is an image that, I have from a house, and what I'm going to do is, well, I already did it. If I go here, I'm going to basically build from that photograph a graphic design. And now this designers do it a lot, for like, postcards, flyers, or things like that, promotional stuff. They start with a photograph and then they build up from that photograph the design that they want. Obviously, they have the option of changing the color, creating it more interesting and more fun. So that's what you're going to do for this assignment. You're basically going to select a photograph of a house, architecture, an object, a person. It can be really fun with a person, because even if you do your own portrait, I think that would be really interesting, because then you start dealing with shading and how the image looks by combining shapes with the brush. You can combine a brush on top of these shapes. Now, I'm going to focus on the pen tool because I think that's the one that you probably should master as you go forward in Photoshop. But the brush, you can do it in addition to this in a separate layer and like add stuff on top of it to create more shading and stuff. But for now, what I'm going to focus on is on the pen tool. And the one thing I want to talk about that I don't think we have talked about, maybe we did, but it's fine to reinforce it if we did, is to talk about how to create the gradients, okay? Like the background that you see here. And, all this stuff, like you can see images like this one that are really graphic, like for the iPod when it came out originally. It was like shapes of people, and then you had a solid color in the background. I have students that have drawn on top of photograph to create like a stylistic, image. This one is not finished, but you can get the idea of how you build it up. Or you can kind of try this, kind of like the Apple ad. I drew this one around just so you can see how that will look. And then once you do that, because it's a shape, you can change the color, you can play with it, you can move it. You can do anything you want, like now this is like movable, right? So that's one of the advantages of doing this graphic design is like you can really modify and alter the original photograph into something that is even more fun and exciting to capture the viewer's attention. So what I'm going to do first is I want to talk about the different options that you have and how you should go about this. So let's go back to this one so I can go from scratch. And one of the things that you have to remember is like, okay, so I'm going to do shape right around her with the pen tool. So you have to select the P right on your keyboard, or go here to the menu of the toolbar and then grab that tool icon right there. And once you get that, one of the tips that I give my students a lot is when you're working with the pen tool, and particularly when you're doing a shape, you want to have the fill off. And the reason is, I'm going to show you what's the reason. If I go, let's do red, just so it can be visible. As you're going around, right, and you're drawing, one of the things that happens is it tries to fill your image even if you're not done. So that can be kind of weird when you're working, because sometimes it doesn't let you see where you're going. Okay, so for example, if I go here and now you see like it starts getting on the way sometimes. So this is something that I definitely feel like you should have off while you're doing your path, because it's covering part of your image. So when I'm going here, for example, now what do? Like I don't know where the leg follows. So this is something that's really important to have it off beforehand, so that way you can focus really on the line that you're doing and not be disturbed by this like visual fill that's getting on your way. So that's really easy. You just go to fill here and make sure you turn it off, and you can do it while you're doing it. The other one that is not that impactful while you're drawing it is the stroke. The stroke, in case, it might be like really thick, and then it will get on your way. But most of the time it's not. Right now it's 3 pixels. So if I have like a red line, you can see it now, right? But most of the time I just have these off when I'm doing it. I just go here and select off. So that way I can just focus on following this, okay, around. So that's what is my suggestion, right? Like there are other people that might find it that is useful for them, but for me, I feel like it gets on the way. So I just have it off. And then once you complete it and you close your path, then you can add it. You can just go here and add the color that you want. Um, and one of the things that I want to point out is once you have the path, or let's say shape in this case, because it's really a shape, you have the shape done, you can also go to the side here and, the color are right here. That's like by default what you see. And you see the CMYK, you see grayscale. You have basically any color you can think of. If you go here to this little icon, you can open the color picker, and you have seen this window before. You can pull it up or pull it down, and you can go to the entire spectrum and find any color you want. Okay. So say if I want green, and then now it's green. So don't be fooled. Like if you open this and right away, it just shows you what you have recently used, and then it has some presets, but you can just click here and then pick whatever color you want. That's usually what I do, unless I definitely have a color that I used recently that I want. For example, if you have it on the foreground and you already selected it beforehand, then you can get it from the recently used. So that's something good to know. Now, right next to this one, there is the gradient tool. Now, this is really fun because you can combine any colors or colors to play with this. So it shows you like a little preset. So if I go here, it goes like from this orange, kind of pink, purple, all the way up. And you can see it on this graph right here. Now, the one thing that you can notice is there's this little squares right here. Do you see the squares at the bottom right here? So if you double click on any of those, let's click on this one, it opens this window, and then you can pick any color you want. So even though you see some presets here, that doesn't mean that those are the only colors that you have available. You can go in and modify it, to whatever color you want. Let's say if I want it just red on the middle, I can do that. So that's something really cool that you can play with. And you can change it to how many colors you want. These little squares that you see here, those control like the gradient. Okay, so you can pull these in and out and play with them. They don't have to stay in that area. And you can tell that when I did that and I pull it out, it pulled a different square right here. So you can do that too if you want to add more. I usually don't add a lot of these. Usually I just have 3. Unless you want like a crazy gradient with a bunch of different colors, that can work too. But you can just move them around and play around with them and figure out what color you want them. So right now I probably should click here and make this one pink or something like that. So that's basically how the gradient works. You have also translucency. So if you click here on the basic, you can see that one of them goes all the way to transparent. And if you see the image now here, right, she goes from blue and then suddenly you see more of her. And that's what this is right here. When you see this checkerboard, that means that the opacity is basically going to 0 and there is no, you can see the entire image underneath. So there's like the blue and white, the basic, but if you go scroll down, you have like more options that are already presets that you can go through, like greens. They're divided by colors. So it's kind of quicker, right? If you kind of go here and you can pull this up and you can see all the colors and be like, oh, I want that one, and so it's kind of easy. But if you want your own color, you can still modify these. You can just go here, double click it, and then change it. So even though they're presets here, you can totally play with them. Let's see, pastels. All right, so that's basically the gradients. And I forgot something at the bottom here. It says linear. You don't have to have it only linear. You can change it to radial. So it's like a circle. You have angle. And you can change the angle here on this little graph. Reflected and then diamond. Okay, so you can change that here. And you can change also like the angle of how the gradient is behaving. Particularly, it's more noticeable when you have it like this, or like the linear, right? where that line is. So even though it's falling in one air, like in one way, when you add it, you can totally change the scale here. So there's a couple of things I want to point out. Um, so that's what we have here. And then we have also patterns. I personally don't play a lot with these because I never had the need really to do it. I usually just bring my own images and then do a mask or something like that. But there are a couple of presets here of patterns. You have like leaves. I think the fun ones are like the water. I kind of like this one, I think. Reminds me of like a painting of David Hockney. If you zoom out, like if you go all the way to the bottom, it says scale, and you can like go further away, right, or go closer into it. So it's kind of cool. It adds something different. Definitely a texture or something like that. Usually when I'm creating my work, I usually use my own images. I try to not to use presets or filters or anything like that. But this is something that I know that a lot of people play with. You can also import your own if you go here and new pattern preset. So you can create your own patterns. And there are a couple, they're kind of fun. You have like grass. But anyway, that's something else that you can do to add texture, to your design. So that's something that I wanted to point out because I don't think we went into detail on the fill and all the things that you could do within it. Um, and the stroke is pretty straightforward, but you have also options. For example, if you want a gradient on the stroke, you can do that. They use this a lot, for example, for giving the illusion. If you have like a stroke around something that you want to make it look like gold, then they use like yellows and browns, and so it looks like it's glowing, right? So that's a really cool technique that you can use with this stroke. If you select the colors that are similar to gold or silver, you can make it look like it's reflecting light. Let's see what these ones are. So it can be kind of fun. You can get kind of cool. Right now it's like overwhelming because it's combining like this fill. So let me take out the fill and then the stroke. Let's make it thicker so you can notice it. There you go. Now you can see it. All right. So that's what it does, right? So it adds like a gradient, onto the stroke. So you can do the same effects that we were doing with the fill. You can do them with the stroke. Okay. So that opens the possibilities very big because now you can like definitely play with it. You can see that now that I show you that, you can tell that my design here was really simple because I was just testing out, with the pen tool, like going around, just putting me some music and going around. So I didn't got to all the way to the texture or anything like that. But I want you guys to try it out. I want you to open an image. Whoop. Something, it can be a portrait, an object, but I want you to definitely try to use both the fill and the stroke in different tones of color so that way you can combine multiple shapes and things like that, and try some of the gradients or textures of the pattern so that way you can create an interesting design. And you can see that there's a lot of things that you could do once you start thinking about what you can do with this and combine it, for example, with a brush. That can be really fun. I know that a lot of students have done that, especially the ones that are into drawing. Then you can really draw it. If you have like a Wacom tablet and you have, you're using the brush and you're painting, that can be really nice and satisfying to kind of like move your arm as if you're drawing on top of your photograph. So if you have a tablet, like a Wacom tablet, like the ones that we had in the room, that would be a great tool to use, in particularly when you're getting into this kind of waters of like drawing and creating a lot of paths. Because if you start clicking with the mouse a lot, you're going to get tired. So try to pick something that's simple, not super detailed, so that way you can like really focus on what you're doing. But if you're skilled and you have a Wacom template, I would really encourage you to do something fun that will really push you, because that's what this assignment is about. It's about really diving in and pushing what you can do with the pen tool, the shape, and maybe the brush if you want to do that too. Let's see. Is there anything else that I want to talk about this? No, I think for now, I just want you to trace that. So this will be something that I'm hoping that maybe you can incorporate in the poster assignment. So that way you can kind of combine, the image with also some type and some interesting design. So try to use some shapes with gradients and strokes and things like that in combination with photographs and type. Anyway, I hope that you learned something different today and maybe gave you some ideas of things that you can do. All of these techniques that I showed you today, it will take time. This is not something that you just do quickly. You definitely have to put some music, sit down, and start doing paths and, be organized. Remember, that's really key. One of the things that I suggest that you do when you're doing an image, let's say like this one, is that you start from the background. At least that's how I do it. I start from the background. So, for example, I would do the sky, as a gradient. Then I do the mountains, the fence. Then I do the house, and then the elements that are in the foreground. That makes it a lot easier, right? If you start from the foreground and then build to the back, that can be a little bit. It's kind of counterintuitive because it's satisfying to kind of see the things falling in place, right, on top of it. Imagine that you have a paper and you start putting stuff on top of it. That's how you should do it. So that way, and that's how a painter will do it, right? They paint the canvas and the background and they start adding to it until the detail. So the same way you have to work with this, okay? You start with the background and then you build all the way up. So that's a really good suggestion that I should have mentioned earlier. If you have any questions, just let me know. I'll be available. And I hope that you enjoy this, and I'll see you soon. Thank you very much.